So I'll be taking you through Webpack and why Webpack is important, and uh, and also if maybe you ever ejected your Create React app, you'll see that there's a folder called scripts, and in that folder you'll find a Webpack config. So Webpack is basically a module bundler. It takes various files. So as you can see from the website, you can take JavaScript files, Sass files, images, handlebar files, and then it'll merge them all together, creating one JS bundle, one CSS bundle, and uh, and uh, and also your assets in you could set it to in a specific folder or in any way you like. So how I came to know about how I came to discover Webpack is when I was creating a React app, and it was actually on an online forum. I asked somebody whether they usually use Create React app for production websites. So for some, they said they use it partially. So I didn't really understand what he said by that, because that would mean they have a Webpack config and another Create React app which they merge somehow. And for some, they said they mostly use Webpack, and it's mostly the standard. So I just started learning Webpack. Yeah. So for this, I'll do more of a practical approach to to using Webpack. So we'll start from an empty directory here, as you can see on my VS Code. So we'll start with let me I've already created some files which are basically some HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files, which uh, will change them to make them use Webpack. So by doing that, we'll be able to even change, other than using JavaScript, you can use TypeScript instead, or we could even add prefixes to our CSS automatically just through Webpack. So let me just bring in the HTML and the CSS boilerplate. Yeah. So this is basically a basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript counter. Show you. Yeah, so here is a counter. So it basically increments by one and decrements by one. It's similar to, if you've ever used Redux, it's similar to sort of the example. The yeah, sort of yeah, similar to the example. Yeah. Okay. So for Webpack to interpret these files, it'll need one specific entry to so that you can be able to identify the files which you've imported after after maybe lower in your dependencies. So for example, like when you're creating a React app, initially in the app.js, you usually see that there's an import for React app there, and an import for React DOM. Then you use it to render your file and everything. So Webpack will go through that chain and go through every component, and will be able to extract the JavaScript and create this sort of like a tree, tree, tree which will bundle all together into a JavaScript file. So first of all, we'll just create a, a Webpack config. So in the Webpack config, uh, so in the Webpack config, we'll basically have this. We'll be exporting an object which will have all the Webpack settings we'll need. So first of all, we'll add the mode setting. So the mode setting basically tells Webpack to 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 include certain features such as uh, such as creating source maps, and also for bundles it will not minify the JS bundle since this is in development. And yeah, and since in development, if you are to minify the bundles, it will make it slower since the browser will have to to go through the minified. And also when you're maybe debugging your code, you really don't want to just scroll through a long line of JavaScript just to get to where the problem was. So in development, it doesn't minify or anything, so the bundles are usually big. So second of all, um, we'll have to create an entry point. So the entry, so in my example, the entry will be the index.js, because in the index.js, it brings in all it selects all the HTML elements and adds events to them, then calls the add function, which is in a different file, add one to JS, then it calls, then also it adds a click listener to a second button, which calls the subtract one function in the sub1.js. So for this, uh, we'll, we'll, we'll use the path module in Node.js. So what the entry will basically do, it will take the path which is uh, it will combine these two paths. So the double underscore directory name is our current directory. Then it will concatenate the index.js. So it will basically concatenate this file. So after that, we'll need to describe an output. So the output will basically be the folder where our bundle will be. Our bundle will be will be what? Will be after being transpiled or compiled. That's why it will be placed so that it can be imported now back into our HTML file as one JS bundle. So what you're doing here is basically telling Webpack that after compiling this index.js or index.ts, after compiling this, we wanted to create a folder called dist under our current directory and and uh, and add that bundle inside. So our bundle will be called index.js. So after that, we'll now describe our module. So the module will basically have certain rules that will tell us, like for example, let me just write it up. Yeah. So I can actually just remove that X. So what basically happens in a module is you'll create certain rules. So these rules will basically define how your files, may they be JavaScript files, TypeScript files, CSS, SAS, or it's even what else? Other files, images, text. So these places will basically tell you'll basically define the 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 loader which you'll use. So the loader actually just takes your JavaScript, then transpiles it to uh, uh, a different version of JavaScript. So, for example, you could be using import statements and or using like the ternary operator, and you see in browsers such as, let's say, Internet Explorer or maybe Firefox or Safari, maybe these items are not known by the browser. So they could, if you don't transpile them, they could end up causing an error in your code. So you'll use a transpiler such as Bab, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's Babel or Babel, which will transpile your code maybe to an earlier version of JavaScript, which you'll be able to run in maybe Internet Explorer or yeah, or any of those other browsers. So that's what basically this will do. So Webpack will just go check your files. So it will go like to sub1.js. Since it matches this regular expression, it will use Babel to transpile that file. So that's what basically this means. So we can add another rule. So let's say for CSS. So 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 in Babel, the funny thing is that you can actually use multiple loaders on one file. So and for Babel, things are not. I don't I want to say things are not as normal as the way, as you can see here. I've created an array, and you'll expect that in an array, it will actually go from style loader to the CSS loader, then to the post CSS loader. So in Babel, things actually go in reverse. So once it gets this CSS file, it will first of all go through the post CSS loader. So this loader will basically add the prefixes for CSS. So maybe you've used a CSS which is only present in maybe Chrome, but maybe Mozilla has it, but it's behind a certain prefix, like the MOZ prefix or the WebKit prefix in something like Safari or Internet Explorer. So this will add those prefixes. Then the CSS loader will basically will basically if you have maybe if you're using modules, it will bundle all your CSS together, and it will basically do that. It mostly just reads your CSS to just check for maybe for errors, or if module your CSS or something like that. And finally, the style loader is what will inject the styles to your HTML. So in if when you're using the style loader, you'll basically find that in the final build, you'll find the styles are usually inserted in the head element. Like maybe when you started learning HTML and CSS, you used to put a style tag in the head element with your style. So that's what basically the style loader will do for you. So finally, we can go to the plugins. So for the plugins, we'll first use the HTML Webpack plugin. So this plugin basically takes, as you can see in our example, we have this HTML file. It will take this as a template, and it will inject our may our styles. It will come here on the head tag and inject those styles, and also inject a script tag here with the correct path to a bundled JavaScript. To pass in and it takes in an object, a parameter template. So for this we'll use um, HTML template. Yeah, and I believe that's everything we need. So we can start downloading things. So when you're using Webpack, you usually end up downloading a lot of things which you don't even know. But that's how it is. We'll first uh, I'll be using npm, so we'll import everything as a actually fast. Let me just create. So we'll just create an empty package.json. And then you can start installing things. So first of all, you install Webpack, and you install the Webpack CLI, then the Webpack. Yes. So this server will basically allow us to see our site in real time, like the way you could do in Create React app. You just see your site in real time and make changes, and they'll appear on the website. So we need that. We need the Babel loader. We'll also need Loader, post CSS loader. Okay, HTML. Loader, and what we need. Don't think we need anything else. Yeah, everything. So as that is installing, so as I said in the beginning, Webpack bundles modules. So in a scenario like this, you can see we've not imported any module. So if Webpack was to meet this file, it will actually spit out an error saying like the add one doesn't know where the add one function is coming from or the sub one function. But in real sense, as you can see here, we've imported them, or yeah, we've added them to our HTML, and and uh, and that's how our index.js is able to access the add one and the sub one function. So what we'll need to do is to export these two functions. Yeah. So now we have these two functions imported. And I believe everything is installed. And yeah, okay. So we'll now create a script, a simple, just a script for, let's say, our dev. So this script will basically run Webpack. So when it runs Webpack, it'll run Webpack serve. So this will basically run the dev server, and the dev server will go and look. By default, it looks for webpack.config.js. Yeah. So once it looks for the Webpack config.js, it will now come and check what's the mode it's development. So I'll not minify. What's the entry point? It's the index.js, which is here. Okay. So next, check where to output so that you can be able to call where it's supposed to output the bundle basically. So in development, this will be done in memory, and you won't actually see a dist folder here. Finally, it will also just go through the loaders and the files with everything, just checking the file extension, using the right loader for that extension, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and finally, just the index.html. So now we've added this as modules here, so we'll have to take them out of our initial index.html, since they will just be injected automatically by Webpack for us. So also for the CSS, as I said in the beginning, Webpack is only able to find modules. So for also our CSS, we'll also have to import it here. That's not visible. Okay. Yeah. So now we can try and run the dev script. I know it might not be successful at the first try, but you just go through the errors and you'll see what might be the problem. I don't think there's any problem, but we'll see. There's an error. Oh, it's not defined the Webpack plugin. So, what to do is actually install the Webpack loader, HTML Webpack loader, and actually applying for the plugin. Just put it there and after that, just install. So it's removed the loader and just wait for the plugin. Yeah, so the plugin is in. Yeah, let's try running the dev again. Second thought. So what we can also do is we can also add a configuration for a dev server. So maybe if you've noticed or you've never noticed, when you usually serve your Create React app, it automatically opens the browser for you. So we can also do this in Webpack. So you use the dev server key. So you basically define in it. You basically you will say inside this key that uh, whenever the dev server whenever I run Webpack serve, I want the dev server to open my browser and show me the what the website. Then we can also, maybe for debugging sake, we can also we can also have we can also show an overlay on our website. So this overlay will basically maybe in your create React app, when you usually, let's say, face an error, it usually shows you like on your on the browser that you have an error at maybe this line, or what you've done is not right, or maybe you've maybe instead of writing const you wrote cont or something. Yeah, such syntax errors. Basically, the syntax errors will be shown on the on the website. So this is what will configure that for us. It will, on our browser with the errors. So where it will show errors or any warnings, maybe in our JavaScript. So we can try running the dev again to build secondary. this is live debugging. We didn't bring in the CSS loader. Yeah, that must be yeah, that's the problem. I left a lot of things outside. Yeah, so these are basically the this can be the nuances behind Webpack, but usually when you create a Webpack config, it doesn't change that much. You don't Once it's working, you basically add things to it. Yeah, it's very rare to find that you start from uh, from an empty Webpack config and just populate it with all the loaders and plugins and all the configuration you need. So we can try again. Hmm. Um, it's telling me I was using the loader and it's not part of this, not a key in this object. So let's see. Yeah, so it's working and let's wait. Yeah, so here's the same site on this first one. And yeah, so you can see, yeah, is it? Yeah, so here down here. So it told us the project is running at the port localhost that and also over my local network on that port. And it's also created, as you can see here, um, one index.js bundle and also the index.html. So as I was saying earlier, for the styles, if you are to inspect our styles here, you can see that the styles were actually just injected between our head tag. So this is where our styles are. Ideally, you wouldn't want to have this in let's say in a production environment, since you would want to maybe cache your styles on maybe a CDN or something. Then they could just be sent separate from the HTML. Yeah. So we can now change this config to more of a production ready Webpack config. So yeah, so to change this, we could just create another. and we can edit this. So first of all, we would like to extract our CSS. So for this, so for this there's a plugin for this. So you can just install it. Yeah, it's a mini CSS. It's called the mini CSS. It's called the mini CSS extract plugin. So what it will basically do, it will extract our CSS from, rather than being in the head, it will be in a separate file. So to add this, we just import it into our config. So it has so this package has we'll be using it for two functionalities. So first of all, as I said, the style loader usually injects our CSS into the head element. The style loader will use a loader from the mini CSS extract plugin. So we'll use the loader, and finally here the Webpack config in the plugin. Sorry, we can import the mini CSS extract plugin, and we can take options. So we can give it a file name. Let's call it min CSS, or call it index. Let's call it index.css. So other than that, what can we do? We can also remove the dev server. So since this is a production build, we're not using the dev server to see it per se, since it will just be building the files and creating a bundle which is for production ready. So also we'll also need to change the mode here to production. So this will now minify JS. Yeah, this will now minify our JavaScript files. And finally we'll add it. We'll now add a build script here. So the -c flag, you basically, after it, you tell it the path to your Webpack config. So the C basically, the C means config. Okay. I believe the config was the wrong. Yeah. Using that. So I believe the config is now okay. So as you can see, we've now gotten our bundled HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. So here bundled everything, and as you can see, it is also minified, so it's all in one line. So inside here, as you can see, this is our yeah. So this is our JavaScript where we were selecting the elements from the page and all that. Also, here is our CSS. Yeah, HTML, which has also been minified, and as you can see, it has also injected the index.css and the index.js with the differ attribute. So this will make it run at the end of the HTML. So we can use a simple package which should be able to serve this for us. So it's called serve. It can create a server which can just pass in a directory to it and it will just serve the files from it. So we can just add it to our script as a serve. And also maybe another tip for when you're using npm scripts, when you can make a script which runs before another script by adding a just adding pre before the actual script. So in my case, we have this build script. So I would like to, let's say, clear the this directory before every time I create a build. So I could write a pre-build script. And this script would, for example, just remove and recursively forcefully remove all files in this folder. So this script will run all the time before the build script. So we can just try and run the build script, and you'll see first of all it runs the pre-build script which removes everything, then finally the build script which creates our build. So we can now try and solve this. And we can open it in our browser. Yeah, so this is the same application. We can still increment and decrement, and now maybe let me open it in incognito since I have plugins and all which will end up just putting the files. So we can open it in incognito, and you can see the final bundle size. Yeah, it's around 1.2 kilobytes, and it's around 1.2 kilobytes. And as you can see, our CSS is separate, as you can see here, and also our JS is also a separate file. Yeah, so I I think that's enough for an introduction to Webpack. And and if you have any questions, I would like to answer, or maybe try to answer any of your questions. Yeah. Other than that, I would like to give it back to Ram.